Today, we're going to talk about how to prevent coming out of pocket with your own cash to get a refinance done, even when the banks say you got to bring cash to closing. Hey, my friends, thank you for tuning into the show today. So let's talk about this. You may be, there's a good chance if you clicked on this video, you may be in a situation where you borrowed some private money, maybe even hard money, and you bought a rental property. Maybe you bought a house that you couldn't flip, and now you need to refinance it. And the bank's telling you, loan to value, maybe your appraisal came low, whatever issue it is that, hey, we need you to bring some cash to closing. Maybe you don't have that cash to bring to closing, or maybe you just rather not bring that cash, whatever, your business model is. Well, I want to share with you a personal story because I learned how to I learned this strategy kind of the hard way, so to speak. And this situation was going way back in the day. This is going back probably 10 years or so. And I had a lot of rental properties, and I originally started buying rental properties with hard money and refinancing them and maxed out all my Fannie Mae loans. And I started putting together partnerships with private lenders, but they were true LLC partnerships. And so I went that route for a long time. And then I went back to buying properties on my own. And so this was 2009, 2010. And I was buying houses at a very, nice discount. So there's plenty of equity in them. There was great cash flow. But refinances were incredibly hard. And so I continued buying houses just knowing that, hey, I'm operating my business on sound fundamentals, and these are good properties with good equity, solid equity, great cash flow. My lenders were in a very good loan-to-value position, and they were happy with the interest rates I was paying them. I was paying them, 12% interest back then, and so they were happy. But I knew, hey, that's not really sustainable for me because I need to amortize these loans and get them in cheaper interest so I can start creating more wealth for myself and paying down principal. So after about a year or so of doing, executing this model, I probably bought 15 rentals. Some of my private lender loans were beginning to come due. So I kind of, went on kind of good faith and hope that, hey, in a year from now, I'll be able to refinance these properties. So I'll be honest with you, it took longer than I thought before I could even get a bank to say yes. This is once again back in the 2009, 2010 era. Really specifically, it's probably mid to late 2010. And the banks had just been saying, nope, we're not doing investor loans. We're not doing investor loans. And I had great, excellent credit. I had began building up my reserves. Keep in mind, I'd only been in the business for a few years, and I started with no money, started with a credit card. Most of you know my story. So I started with nothing, and I was getting to the point where I had some reserves, and that was nice. And finally, I went to get a refinance done, and the bank said yes. And I felt like Noah on the ark, and the dove brought back the twig in his mouth, and there was an end at sight. Like, land is near. We're coming out of this, dark time of real estate, which was an incredible buying opportunity, but just hard to get financing. So I went through the refinance process with my bank, and we got the appraisal done, and so here it was. My issue was that the appraisal came back low. So this was a new construction house, tons of cash flow. Comps were a little bit hard. I would give them that. But appraisals were coming in very low back then, right? For obvious reasons. One, because of data and comps, and two, banks and, appraisers were probably in cahoots a little bit and just kind of, talking and being very, very conservative. So I get that. I really do. But the long story short was, on this deal, they wanted me to bring $15,000 to closing. And I was like, well, crap, there goes some of my reserves. And so I went, proceeded and went to closing, got my, nice 6.5% interest rate, 15, 20-year amortization, whatever it was. But I had to bring $15,000 to closing. And I didn't like that. And I was like, man, I've got like 10 more of these houses I need to refinance. If I keep this pace up, that's like $150,000, which I did not have. And that was not a good place to be. But I knew I had to get out of my high interest loans. I knew I needed to honor my commitment with my lenders, get their money back to them. So I proceeded to the second refinance. Boom, once again, survey came back low, and I was in that same predicament. This time they wanted me to bring about $10,000 to closing, which I had. I just didn't have much more. So I had this genius idea, I thought, and that was to go talk to my lender about maybe taking back a second lien for that $10,000. So what I did, I reached out, I sent a text, gave him a phone call, whatever I did, and say, hey, bud, Brant here, and I really appreciate you investing, and trusting me and investing with me. And here's the deal. Want to get your money back to you. I'm in the process of refinancing this property. And the issue is, the appraisal came back a little bit low. Bank wants me to pay about $10,000 out of pocket. I just paid $15,000 on another deal. I wanted to just run this by you, see if you would be open to taking back a second lien on this same property for $10,000, and I will aggressively pay it off. And I said, if you want me to pay it off in a year, 2 years, 3 years, whatever, I will aggressively pay it off, because I really want to get, this refinance done and try to do it without coming out of pocket. To me, it sounded great. I had always performed, paid on time. I paid early, as a matter of fact. I do that on my loans with my lenders, give them peace of mind. Unless there's a snafu with the auto bill pay or whatever, we try to pay all of our loans early. Pretty good guy, tons of equity, despite what the survey said on this deal. I thought it was like a no-brainer. Oh, and I even offered hey, I don't even need to lower your interest rate. I'd even pay higher interest on this $10,000 because I'm just going to knock it out, paying off really, really quickly. So presented that to him, and what do you think he said? A lot of you are probably thinking yes. He actually said nope. He said, nope, I need my money for some other stuff. Let me know when you can get it back to me. Thank you very much. So I was like, well, crap. There goes that plan. But I said, you know what? I still have to get these refinances done. And so what I did, I began talking to some of my lenders, because not all of my refinances, but several of them did come where I needed to bring cash to closing. And I was able to negotiate that with my lenders. I had that same conversation. I said, hey, I'm going to return 95% of your money. Would you be willing to take back a second lien, $10,000, $15,000, whatever it was? And I will give you a personal guarantee, right? I showed them my equity in the property and my other properties. And I had my attorney draw up a note, deed of trust, and I aggressively paid down those second liens so that my lenders got to keep some of their money at play. They got a good majority of it back. It helped me prevent me pulling out big chunks of cash, which I didn't really have at that time. So it helped me to preserve some of my capital, preserve some of my cash flows. And then the great thing about it was as I aggressively paid down these second liens, 2-3 years later, and the market started coming back wonderfully, I had paid off those second liens. So I found myself in a really good equity position in my deals. So the reason I'm sharing this video right now is another investor friend of mine just reached out. He's in the same situation that I found myself in years ago. And he's like, hey man, I'm doing all these refinances. And as of the time of the recording this right now, it is March 31st, 2020. We're going through the Corona pandemic. We're going through the market crash. We're going through all this fun stuff for real estate, and he's in that same situation. So I shared that strategy with him. He's like, man, I never thought about that. So I wanted to share it with you guys. Hope that helps for you, and in whatever situation that you're in. You may be in that position. You need to pull out some cash. To closing, look, talk to your lenders, talk to other private lenders about doing a second lien. Educate them, make sure that they are aware of what they're investing in. I do invest in some second lien deals. I'm not going to get into that on this video, but make sure that you give them the information that they need to safeguard themselves and make a wise financial decision if that works for them. I definitely have some criteria that I require when we're investing in a second lien, but I hope that helps you in your situation.